Today's webinar, Introduction to Chain of Custody Certification for Forest Owners, is made possible through Forestry and Natural Resource Webinars, a partnership with the North Carolina State University Cooperative Extension, Southern Regional Extension Forestry, and the Texas A&M Forest Service. I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Jeff Stringer. Jeff is a professor of hardwood silviculture and forest operations at the University of Kentucky Department of Forestry. Dr. Stringer specializes in hardwood silviculture, forest operations, and best management practices. His work includes research in his areas of specialization and the development of continuing education programs for forest owners, forestry, and natural resource professionals. He's currently director of the Kentucky Master Logger Program and editor of the Kentucky Log Jam newsletter. Jeff?
Well, thank you. And we're going to spend some time today with a presentation that provides an introduction to chain of custody certification. This is specifically done for forest owners or woodland owners. And the presentation's focus is how certified timber and pulpwood flow into the manufacture of certified wood products. Now, understanding how this works provides both forestry and natural resource professionals and woodland owners with information needed to make good decisions on forest certification. So let's review a little bit. Now, forest certification is typically what we call FM certification, forest management certification. It means that the forest is managed to a set of standards. And in most cases in the U.S., family forests are going to be certified through the American Tree Farm or perhaps through the Forest Stewardship Council. Those are the two main certification systems that handle a lot of the family forest certification in the U.S. Now, wood certification is a general term meaning that the wood or wood products are produced in whole or part from timber fiber that's grown in a certified forest. And so forest certification provides a source of certified timber for the industry. And the industry uses the certified timber and fiber to make all types of wood products and chips, lumber, and paper, finished products like furniture, cabinetry, all that kind of thing. Now, if there's enough demand for certified wood products, then there's a preference for certified timber and fiber in the marketplace. And we'll talk more about that at the end of the presentation about how this demand works and the drivers that are associated with it that ultimately are going to affect whether the landowner makes a decision to become certified or not. So we'll talk more about this linkage and this demand in the different sectors, if you will. So here we've got a diagram of a chain of custody or a supply chain, if you will, that runs from the certified forest, and here we've got family certified forests that are certified either by American Tree Farm or Forest Stewardship Council, FSC, or both. So these forests have an FM certificate, and that material is going to be cut and hauled by a logger, ultimately goes to a sawmill, pulp mill, that kind of thing. They make a product that's ultimately going to be used, and maybe go through multiple secondary producers, ultimately winds up in furniture or printing or whatever. And so this is a diagram, if you will, of a typical supply chain. Now we have FM certification here associated with the forest. And then the other certificates that are required are called chain of custody certificates. So this, the industry, the different components in the industry, whether it's a logger, sawmill, pulp mill, furniture, manufacturer, printer, whatever, they have what's called a chain of custody certificate. So the chain of custody certification, or COC for short, requires that there's a clear separation of certified and uncertified timber or wood at all stages of handling. Through the what's being, obviously the forest is pretty easy, because if you certify a forest, let's say it's 100 acres, then all of that timber or pulpwood that's in that 100 acres is going to be certified. And so that's pretty easy to determine that. And then as that wood moves into the supply chain through its processing and shipping and manufacturing and all that, there has to be a clear separation, and each one of those entities in there have to know what's certified and what's not certified. And we'll explain that in more detail. Now, the chain of custody, this whole system requires that everyone that owns and takes possession of the wood must have a chain of custody certificate. So obviously the forest owner does. He has an FM certificate, and that FM certificate is used in the chain of custody process, if you will. A logger, if they purchase and they hold the timber, they take possession, all that kind of thing, they may have to have a chain of custody certificate. Primary mills, secondary mills, manufacturers, all that kind of thing. If they own it and they possess it, they have to have a chain of custody certificate. Now, retailers often don't. Let's say material is going to go to a building project. It's not a retailer, but it's the end user of the certified wood product, or it's going to be sold in a retail store like a Home Depot or Lowe's or big box store, something like that. Well, those on the retail end of it, they don't have to have a chain of custody certificate necessarily. And the reason they don't is that product is going to have a label on it at that point in time. So it's clearly defined what is certified at that point in time from the standpoint that it actually has a label on it. So the forest management certificate and the chain of custody certificates that are involved ensures credible documentation of proof of ownership and source of the wood product. So think of it like a paper trail coming from the woods or the stump all the way to the finished product. So here we've got forest management certification on the left. So you have FSC, American Tree Farm, SFI, and those materials are going to flow to industries that have a chain of custody certificate. Now in the case of FSC, if you have a mill that has an FSC certificate, chain of custody certificate, they're going to require, to take credit for it anyway, they're going to require material come from an FSC certified forest. Now you see here when you come to American Tree Farm, there's no such thing as an American Tree Farm chain of custody certificate. That does not exist. American Tree Farm only has a FM or forest management certification system. That's what it is by definition. SFI has that system also has chain of custody certificates, just like FSC does, and so does PEFC. Now, American Tree Farm doesn't mean you're froze out of the system just because there's no American Tree Farm chain of custody certificate, because what happens in those situations is the American Tree Farm material is accepted by PEFC industries that hold chain of custody certificates for PEFC and SFI. So that's how American Tree Farm certified material flows into the development of certified wood products. It's through SFI and PEFC mills. So this is our diagram again showing the certified forest have an American Tree Farm or FSC. If the logger purchases that, holds it, that kind of thing, they have a COC certificate. It's either going to be FSC or, in this case, SFI. Sawmill, pulp mills can have all three, of course, FSC, PEFC, SFI, that kind of thing, and on up down the line. So everybody has a certificate somewhere. Either it's a forest management certificate on the front end at the stump, or it's going to be a chain of custody certificate, SFI, FSC, or PEFC as it moves down the supply chain. So let's contrast this forest management certificate and chain of custody certificate just for a second. So the FM certificate in the standards for forest certification, there are standards that are required to be used during the growing of the forest. And they're going to not govern management really, even though that's what I have on the slide, but they're going to set a standard that you must meet. So these are standards for management for your operations, for planting and herbicide use and harvesting and all of that kind of thing. Okay, now COC, let's contrast that with COC for a second. COC is not a set of manufacturing standards. It's not that. If you want to look at it, the FM standards are a set of manufacturing standards for timber, if you will. It's going to dictate, or you're going to have your operations conform to the standards while you're growing that timber. So you're manufacturing timber, if you want to look at it that way. COC is not a set of manufacturing standards. It is a set of inventory tracking standards. Because if you remember back when I said that chain of custody is all about keeping things separate, keeping certified wood separate from non-certified wood and that kind of thing. So it's a set of, so chain of custody in effect is a set of inventory control standards that an industry must meet. And ultimately this is done so you can track the movement of wood from the stump ultimately to the final user. Now it's not quite that simple, but that general idea is encompassed under what chain of custody is. So it's not a set of manufacturing standards, it's a set of tracking standards. And we're going to show examples of how this works so you can get a better feel for it. So the chain of custody, what does it do? Well, it ensures ultimately that if you have a a certified wood product produced, it ensures that the timber that has gone into it, it comes from a certified forest or represents material that comes from a certified forest. And ultimately, what does this mean to the end user? Well, it means, and to the public, if you will, means that the wood comes from a well-managed forest. There was forest management going on. It met a set of standards, and everybody agreed was a good thing, and so they were well-managed. It also means something fairly simple that we don't often think about. It means that the wood wasn't stolen, the laws were broken, it was harvested safely, environmental protections were in place, all those kind of things. So it ensures that the wood products that were made, if they carry a label, a certified wood label, that all these good things have taken place relative to forest management, the harvesting, and the manufacturing. So here we have a 2x4, and you can see in the background 2x4s here. This was in a Home Depot or big box store where they had pallets of 2x4 studs. And if you look up close, it says that there's an FSC stamp there, so it's a certified wood product. It says mixed source, and we won't get into a lot of detail on different certificate types of label, but suffice it to say that this was a certified wood product here, in this case a 2x4. It's got a certificate number there, and we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. So what does this mean? You got this 2x4 that's got this on here like this. So what it means is that one, somewhere, someplace, there had to be a forest that had a FSC FM certificate. And we don't know where that's at, but we know one had to exist. And if this is a loblolly pine, for example, these are loblolly pine 2x4s, there's a loblolly pine, quite probably plantation somewhere that had a FSC FM certificate. Okay. Now, if the logger had actually purchased that timber, okay, they'd purchase it, and of course then they're handling it and all that kind of thing. They may very well have an FSC or need to have an FSC chain of custody certificate, and certainly the sawmill that is manufacturing this 2x4. Okay, if it is a sawmill, so let's assume it was a sawmill, produced the final 2x4 here, that the sawmill carried an FSC COC certificate as well. And in this case, as you can see on the sticker, there was a Domtar mill. So Domtar as a company had, at the time they owned the facilities that produced this 2x4, they had taken the time to get that mill certified, in this case under FSC. And they did that because they believed it had market benefits for them. So having this wood product means, and this 2x4 means there had to be an FM certificate somewhere that had timber that was cut and hauled from them, that obviously it was certified. Logger carried an FSC chain of custody certificate if the logger purchased it, handled it, and possessed it. Sometimes you have contract logging, that's a different situation. And then of course the sawmill carried an FSC chain of custody as well. So here we have a diagram of a supply chain. Starts out with the certified forest, and the material is going to be cut and hauled and moved by a logger to a sawmill, to an industry maybe that takes that primary product out of that sawmill, makes something out of it, and goes to the consumer. And if all the certificates are appropriately in place here, then that final product can have a label on it, an actual label that says FSC or SFI, whatever it might say PFC on it, whatever, but it'll be a label on the product. Now, if there's any part of this certificate holders drops out, like for example, a logger actually buys the timber from the landowner and holds it, possesses it, and does not have a chain of custody certificate, or if the sawmill, for example, would not have a chain of custody certificate. So if that chain of custody is broken somewhere, then that will preclude the ability of putting a label on that wood product. So everybody that is required to have a chain of custody certificate in this process, all the way back to the forest owner, which of course has an FM certificate. All those have to be in place to make this product be manufactured that has a label on it. So this whole supply chain has to be certified appropriately, and all those certificates have to be in place. So chain of custody standards means that the paperwork can be used to show ultimately that where the wood came from, meaning that it came from certified forest, and ultimately where it's going. And it also helps make sure that the certified wood does not get mixed with uncertified wood. So this is a sawmill, for example, has to keep all this straight in their inventory tracking procedures. And ultimately, every entity that has ownership and possession of the wood must have a chain of custody certificate. And so all these, the chain of custody system, if you will, by all the different, whether it's SFI or PFC or FSC, this basic tenets hold. So one good way to talk about this further and to get in a little bit more detail is to provide a real-world example. And so we're going to do that here. And we're going to start out with a forest. In this case, it's 145-acre woodlands. It is the Raybon Binkley tract as a woodland owner in Tennessee. And that particular tract of timber, and that owner was interested in getting that tract of timber, that woodlands certified, and it did so. He certified it with both American Tree Farm and FSC. So this is what we call dual certification. So in this instance, the landowner had both American Tree Farm certificate, if you will, and a Forest Stewardship Council certificate. Now, in this case, it was certified through an entity called the Center for Forest and Wood Certification. This is an organization that's been developed to provide solutions for certification in the eastern U.S., and it acts as a group manager. So in this case, the Raybon Binkley tract and that landowner got their woodlands, this 145 acres, certified, dual certified, through both American Tree Farm and FSC through the group manager, which was the Center for Forest and Wood Certification. So that's how this landowner became certified. So let me show you what that certificate number means. This is the American Tree Farm number. I call it a number, but it's a designation. And it starts out NSF-ATFS- and then C and a bunch of numbers. So when you break that down, what it means is that first NSF, what that's referring to, that's the initials for the certifying body. So the group manager, which was the Center for Forest and Wood Certification, is certified, and this is the tree farms in the group are certified through this certifying body called NSF. That's the name of it. And you can see the type of certificate here shows up. If you're an American Tree Farm, it says ATFS in the actual number. That's your certification system. Now the next set of numbers, the C0096467-FC1, that's the group manager number. So the Center for Forest and Wood Certification obtained, this is the group number, and then Mr. Binkley's ID is I, and it's at the end. So that's what those series of numbers means in Mr. Binkley's and the Binkley Raybon ownership. That's what their certificate number refers to. Now they also have an FSC certificate, and there's the FSC identifying number. The certifying body in this case for FSC was SCS, which is Scientific Certification Systems. They're a company that does this third-party auditing. And so this was SCS that did the auditing. The certificate type is an FM/COC. You notice how they put COC in the FM certificate, and they did so because this FM certificate number is used in the chain of custody process. So they call it an FM/COC. The group manager number is the 00152G, and this is the group manager, again, is the Center for Forest and Wood Certification, and then Mr. Binkley's ID, or the Binkley Raybon Tract's ID number, and that landowner's number is I. So that's what those different parts of the certification designation mean. Now, in this case, the timber and pulpwood that was purchased by a logger, and this is McQuire Logging. He's out of Central Tennessee, and he also is certified. Now this logging operation has a chain of custody certificates, and they could have both a SFI chain of custody or an FSC chain of custody, and so they have this, and they're going to use this chain of custody certificate to allow them to get credit in the certified markets for the material that they're logging off of the Woodlands, the Raybon Binkley tract. And so if you look at the FSC number for this situation, again, it says SCS is a certified body. We have a certificate type. In this case, it's just a COC. It's not an FM, not a force management. You have the group manager, again, for the Center for Forest and Wood Certification. And then McQuire Logging's ID is AS. So this number, just like in the case with the woodland owners, this number identifies this particular logger in this case, or this industry, that's handling this certified material. And these numbers become important. I'm going to show you how they're going to be used here in a minute in this tracking procedure as you go through the supply chain. Now, so we re-diagrammed this. In this case, we have the certified forest, and it's both dual certified American Tree Farm and FSC, and you see the certificate numbers there. It's been purchased, and those logs are in possession of the logger, and the logger is taking this to a mill. Now, in this case, the mill has multiple certificates as well. But in this case, this mill is interested in the FSC. In this real-world example, they're interested in this material being FSC. So the mill has an FSC number. They have a chain of custody number, if you will. The logger, McQuire Logging, has their chain of custody certificate number as well. Now we have to see how this. Now we're going to see how this is tracked. These numbers are tracked through the system. Now, you have to have paperwork that shows that McQuire Logging purchased this timber. There's got to be something. Normally, that's a contract. So, right, you'll have a contract developed for the purchasing of this timber, and in that contract, this is what it says at the bottom. In that contract, they're going to specify what the landowner certification number was. So, in this case, we're dealing with the interest is in the FSC material. So, you're going to have that that certificate number is going to be in the contract. Okay. Now this contract is also going to say that it's going to have a claim in the contract. And what that means in certification jargon is it's going to say that 100% of the timber that's being purchased is certified. And that's not a hard thing to do because woodlands, I mean, if you've got a tract, a boundary, that whole boundary is going to be certified. Okay. A landowner, you have multiple pieces of property and not all of them be certified. But off this particular boundary is going to be certified. So in the contract, it's going to say, hey, this is the landowner, this is the certificate number for that landowner, and this is the claim. The claim is 100% of that timber is FSC certified. Okay. So what's the documentation that goes between the logger and the sawmill? Well, typically a documentation that is that's transferred from the logger to the mill would be a load ticket. So you have a load of certified timber. It could be pulpwood, for example, that's moving, in this case it is, moving to the mill. In this case, pulpwood's not moving to a sawmill, it's moving to a pulp mill. But they're moving to a mill, and the paperwork that's attached to it's going to be a load ticket. So I'm going to blow this load ticket up right here and see what it looked like. And now, Mr. McQuire, this was the first tract he'd done with certified material. So instead of using normal load tickets, he just got a receipt book, if you will, and used it as a load ticket. Now look what he's got on there. He put a stamp on there that has McQuire Logging, SCS, COC, and that's his certification number. That's his FSC certification number. And it's got a claim on it that says FSC 100%. So the material that he's got on this load, this truck, 100% of it is FSC. Now he's also got on here that it's hardwood pulp, so it designates what this is. It's not, it's not veneer logs, not saw logs. It's hardwood pulpwood. Okay, and it tells it the landowner. The landowner certificate FM number is there. See that SCS, FM, COC, that's certificate number, and you happen to have the counties in and that kind of thing. So that is documentation in the system of where the timber came from, and with a certificate number of that FM certificate number and the logger's chain of custody number, and all that is transferred to the mill. And so the mill generates information as well. So they will say, okay, we've gotten so many tons of pulpwood in this load, and they're logging that in their system, that who it's come from, of course, and that chain of custody certificate in there. So McQuire Logging chain of custody certificate goes into and is attached to that much tonnage at the mill. and they print out a, for example, this is a settlement. You know, mills will do settlement statements that are normally weekly or something. They may do scale tickets, that kind of thing. And here you see an example where there's an ad produced by the mill that certificate number is actually on that paperwork. So that indicates that information has been captured by the mill. Now the mill is going to sell the material to somebody else upstream. So they're going to sell it to the next step. This is a forest industry that's certified, whatever it might be. The example we have was pulpwood, but it could be anything. And typically that material is going to be transferred with an invoice. And so they're going to sell tons of paper, or if it was a sawmill, they're going to sell board foot, you know, thousands of board feet or whatever, to the next person that's making the certified wood product. And that information, that certificate information, is going to be transferred with, you know, on an invoice. So here we just mocked up an invoice. In this case, it's got, you can see on it where there's different claims made. You know, if it was lumber, for example, it would be 4-quarter FAS, red oak, FSC 100%. So there's so much volume of that. It'll have the COC certificate number and all that contained in an invoice. So the bottom line is all that tracking is done, and those certificate numbers are transferred from one entity that owns and takes possession of the wood all the way down the supply line. When that's done, you can generate a product that has a mixed label on it. In this case, FSC mixed label, and that label would actually go on the product, whatever it might be. So you can see here that that certificate information is initiated on the at the forest end, where you have 100% claim, and that certificate number is on the contract. The logger has that. The logger has that contract in his possession. It says, hey, I bought this material from this landowner. It was certified. There's a certificate number, all that kind of stuff. And then there's a load documentation that goes to the mill, and invoice documentation goes to the next supplier, and all that kind of thing. And so this is your paperwork that has all these certificates. Now, what's going to happen is each one of these certificate owners, in the case of the secondary mill, you know, the forest industry, whatever, the pulp mill or sawmill or whatever, the logger, they're going to be audited. Okay, and they'll be audited to make sure that all this paperwork is in place and the inventory procedures are in place. Now, the inventory procedure for a logger is real easy. If he's moving material directly from the stump to the mill, that's really simple because the inventory goes on the truck and the truck goes straight to the mill. If the logger offloads it, like if the logger has a collection yard of their own and that material goes on that collection yard and then is picked up, put on another truck and moved to the mill, then that inventory procedure becomes really important. And they will be audited to make sure they can separate logs from the certified logs or certified pulpwood that is on their yard, is it kept separate from non-certified material if they're bringing both in. So there is actually inventory checking at some point. With a logger, it's usually really easy if he's moving it from stump to the mill. And they'll do the same thing with the mills and all that kind of stuff. So, and there's a lot of detail as to how you track all this through the system and how they control their inventory. And we don't have time to go into that right now. There's lots of different ways of doing it. But you get the idea, and this paperwork is in place. Okay? And ultimately, you know, you can have there's all kinds of different labels on products, and we don't have time to go into that, but there's FSC labels out there and SFI labels, all that kind of thing. And so you can see those on finished products a lot of time if you look. All right, so let's go through a couple of examples of how this purchasing works and how this wood flow works. So if we start out with a certified woodlands or certified forest, in this case it holds an American Tree Farm certificate. And that wood can go to all of these different sawmills and pulp mills and all that kind of stuff. Some of them are certified that, and we've designated that with a C here. So at the top you have a certified pulp mill that has an FSC certificate, for example. And if you go counterclockwise, you see a certified sawmill that has an SFI certificate. And you have a certified pulp mill that has a PEFC certificate. And a stayed mill maybe that has a SFI certificate. So you have, and then you've got, of course, uncertified sawmills and uncertified mills as well. And so the material can go anywhere. Okay, I mean there's no regulation as far as any of that this woodland owner and can move material anywhere. Or if a logger buys it, timber broker buys it or whatever, he can move material anywhere he wants. But to get in order for the industry to count it as certified, you know, it's got to go to an SFI or a PEFC mill. So in this case, there's a certified pulp mill up there that may have an FSC certificate, but they cannot count the American tree farm wood comes in it because their certificate doesn't work that way. FSC doesn't work that way. SFI and PEFC industries can accept tree farm material. So if they want to get certified credit for it, it's got to go to these 3 mills here designated with the yellow arrows on it. So that's pretty straightforward. If we have a Woodland out there, a certified forest that has an FSC certificate, then that material certainly can get counted by the FSC certified pulp mill at the top. So FSC certificate, FM holder of that material you can get certified credit for it if you go to pulp mill. And that's designated in yellow. And I apologize for the yellow arrow going to the PEFC mill. But so what happens is then the SFI mills, for example, they can't claim as credit that FSC material. And so this gets back to the fact that it makes a lot of difference what kind of certificate that the woodland owner has relative to the industries around it, what kind of certificates they have, and what their needs are. Now, if the woodland owner is dual certified, and this was our real-world example where the woodland owner had both an American Tree Farm certificate and an FSC certificate, and the Center for Forest and Wood Certification dual certifies most landowners with both. And the reason you do that is because it increases your options. Now you can move certified material to any certified mill you've got, FSC mill, SFI mill, PEFC mill. You've got those options available to you. So a landowner, it would make sense, if all those options are out there, to be dual certified. With American Tree Farm and FSC, so that material can go anywhere. Now the uncertified mill can certainly take the timber, but they just can't make a certified product out of it, of course. So dual certification can make sense if you have a number of mills holding different certificates in them or around them. So how does a woodland owner benefit by all of this? Well, first of all, the forest ownership must have an FM certificate that it has interest by the industry. If you're a woodland owner that has a property in a part of the country, and let's say you get certified with for FSC, and there is no FSC mill around you, there's no market demand for the material that any mill that you can get to reasonably, then that certificate doesn't do you any good as far as getting a price premium for it because there's no market there. Now it might help you in other ways, but you're not going to get fiscally benefit from it because the mills around you aren't interested in that. If you have SFI mills around you, okay, and then you're American Tree Farm certified, then that makes a lot of sense because now you're going to have mills that that can give you credit for it. So you have to have a certificate that matches the industry demand. Now, this may seem obvious, but it's worth bringing up that the forest ownership must be in a chain of custody's normal procurement radius or distance, so your normal procurement mileage or whatever that might be, or within a reasonable haul distance. And I'll talk about that more a little bit here in a second. So these distances that a mill can procure material and bring it in is based on the product that's being purchased. I think everybody understands that veneer logs can be shipped, hundreds of miles on a truck. 300, 400, 500 miles in some cases. Whereas pulpwood, you have a very limited haul distance. Most times 50, 60 miles. A lot of times, as most loggers want to be hauling pulpwood. Now you can do more than that, but it's that haul distance and that procurement rates can be based on the product that's being moved there. And mills or buyers, have to have the need for the certified material. If there is no demand, if the mills around you there's no demand for certified, they're not moving a certified product, and there's no demand, then that's or the amount of their demand will limit how far they're willing to go to get that. And I'll show you an example of that. So here we got a little diagram. And so right in the middle is a mill. And I just stuck this on this map and just mocked this map up, and there's no real world situation here. But you have a mill, that's a chain of custody certificate. And then they have a normal procurement radius. If it was a sawmill, and maybe they're hauling normally 150 miles or something like that, 200 miles, whatever it is. So they've got a normal procurement radius. And so the blue circles are uncertified forests. So these are just typical, forests that are out there. And if you're within that procurement radius, then you have an option then to move your material to that mill. If you're an uncertified forest, you're outside of that normal procurement radius, then they may not be interested in your material, may have to go somewhere else. And this makes perfect sense. Okay. Now we got a certified forest. So let's talk about what happens with material from certified forest. So these are the triangles there that you see, and so these are certified forests. Now some of those certified forests are within the normal procurement radius. So a mill has no problem in buying and moving that stuff to the mill, no big deal. But you can have certified forests, obviously, that exist outside that radius as well. Now, depending upon the demand, if there's enough demand, if the mill has enough demand for that certified material, and the money's there to do it, they can pull this material into that mill. Now, once you get so far away, like the one that's down there in mid to south Georgia, once you get that far away from this particular mill in this example, it overcomes the financial ability of the mill to go get it. But you could have some certified forests that exist beyond the normal radius, or if you want to look at it this way, the radius for certified material is expanded, okay, because of their demand. Now, if they have very little demand, they may not go very far for that certified material. If they have a big demand for it, they may go quite some distance farther than they normally would. And this does happen for material, and it depends upon the situation that the mill has and the demand that the mill has. And it also relates to where you're at in the country and the product type and that kind of thing. So if this makes sense to you, because this does go on, okay? So a certified forest owner, in some cases, on some market conditions, it could increase the haul distance that could be allowed for that product to come in. Now, I will say this, that if the logger purchases it and takes control of it and all that kind of stuff, that COC certificate becomes important for the logger as well, and that part of the supply chain has to be in place. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the current status of certified markets. Now, this is kind of dangerous to do in a way because this is always changing. And there's always differences at one place in the country or another that might not make what I have here to be totally appropriate. But in the big picture, this works. The paper industry has a fair degree of interest in certified materials, certainly compared to other forms of industry, other forest industry sectors. So the paper industry has a fair amount of significant interest in SFI, PFC, FSC, all that kind of thing. Generally speaking, when you get to like cross ties, so these are tie logs are going to be made into railroad ties and cants, some of that kind of thing. Very limited to no interest in certification. I've never heard of any interest per se in a manufacturer of railroad ties or a buyer buying tie logs that have be interested in certification. It may exist somewhere, but we've just not heard of it. Lumber, so this would be let's just take like hardwood sawmills are producing grade lumber, that kind of thing. There's some degree of interest, not as much as the paper industry. Now, having said that, I think everybody realizes that sawmills produce oftentimes chips. They go to paper mills, so guess what? That web and that supply of paper of chips into the pulp and paper mills can cause some sawmills to have interest in certification through that, even though it may not be through lumber purchase. Now, the amount of premiums up there and that kind of thing, which we'll talk about here in a minute, might be pretty low for that, but there could be some interest there in sawmills from that. And you got veneer mills. There's some moderate interest due to the shipment of veneer. Veneer shipped worldwide, overseas the EU and that kind of thing. And then, of course, secondary product manufacturers, cabinetry and all that kind of stuff. There's certainly interest there. Lead certification and bidding on lead projects and supplying materials to lead building projects. Lead requires, if you want to get a credit for certified wood products, it's got to be FSC. That's just the rules for lead. So that creates some demand for some industries for FSC material. So again, the current status of these markets, generally mills are interested, or manufacturers are interested in getting certified material because they have a certain amount of orders that come in for certified product. And so they want to fill those orders. So that's called market share. You want to maintain your market share. You want to keep your customers happy. You want to fill orders. So moving orders is good. And so if your customer wants certified stuff, you can get it to them That's an order that you can fill and then make money on. Now, premiums are starting to emerge. It's not happening near as fast as a lot of people, everybody probably thought when this whole certification thing started up, thought premiums might come online a little quicker than it has. So premiums are there, particularly in secondary wood industries that are making cabinets, that kind of thing, final products, if you will. There tends to be more premiums there, and as you move down the supply chain, it tends to be less. FSC tends to have the highest price premiums right now, primarily due to the fact that in some regions of the country, there's less FSC ground available. And so because of that, it tends to generate a little bit of a premium at the stumpage. But anyway, suffice to say that premiums are there. Right now I would say that they're not very high. They're low, but that can be enough to help markets and that kind of thing and help people make decisions about certification. Ultimately, this is all regional, local dependent. So you got to know what's going on with the situation in your backyard. Okay, what I've done is painted a kind of a broad brush picture here. Okay? So this demand for certified timber has not developed as fast as expected. It is changing constantly, so this is a constantly changing thing. You got to be up to speed on it, you know. And foresters should know the demand for the certified product in their area and if price premiums are being paid or not. The best source of that information is foresters that are working for chain of custody mills. Consulting foresters, often if they're on their A game, will know what's going on relative to certification. State agency foresters should know. Okay, they don't deal with timber sales directly and that kind of thing, but if they know what's going on in their area, they should hear about this and know it and be able to direct and provide information. Certainly industry foresters do. They're your best source of information. You're not going to get off the internet. Nobody's going to have a sign up saying, hey, we're buying certified material and we're paying 10% more. That's just not going to happen, at least these days. I haven't seen it happen. Probably not going to happen. So you have to have that internal source or that local expertise has to come into play here and finding out about it. So I hope all this, we put this together in a way that you can understand a little bit more about how forest certification, FM certification fits in the supply chain, and understanding and knowing about that helps us as foresters and natural resource professionals, helps us advise landowners, woodland owners. The more they know about this, it helps them position themselves as well. And so this has been an intro into the chain of custody. Obviously, there's a lot more detail to this, just like there is on the FM side that we can't touch on today, but at least it gives you enough information on how this system works, and we hope the information has been helpful.
So we're going to open it up for questions now. If you just type your question in the chat box in the bottom left, we'll take them as they come. We picked up a few on the way, so I'll just go ahead and get some of those started while people are typing. Start at the top here. Do the products have to have the same certification at each step?
So if the point of it is, if the answer is yes in a nutshell, if the final product is going to be have an FSC label on it, then you have to have FSC chain of custody all the way down the line, including the forest. Okay, and so that chain of custody is dependent upon the system that you're working with.
Next question: what does certified credit mean to a landowner?
So what happens is this: if you have a mill, the best thing I do is just give an example. So you have a mill. Certified credit would mean you have a mill that has a demand for something. Let's just say pulpwood. You have a mill that's got demand for this type of certified pulpwood. They need to get some more in the mill, and they could, if they wanted to, develop a purchasing system that says, hey, if you're a landowner out there and you've got this certified material, we're going to pay you X amount ton extra for your pulpwood, let's say. Okay, that's a price premium. So getting a landowner on the FM side, getting a credit for it means that there's going to be some benefit for them. Usually it's a monetary benefit. So much per ton, it's a board foot, whatever.
Okay, next question. Do those certifications really result in a premium for the product?
So it can. I mean, and this is, this is if you got to know your local situation. If the mill has a demand and they're trying to get product in, they're trying to get timber pulpwood in that's certified, whatever, if they've got enough demand, they'll incentivize that, getting that, and that incentivization is usually done monetarily. Now, there are lots of places in the east and in the southeast where there is not a demand enough to provide a premium. There are other places where there are. So that's why the local forester and you can't paint this with a broad brush, and you can't create a map necessarily. There's none out there. You got to know the local certification situation. You got to know what mills are wanting what. Okay, what species they're wanting, or whether it's hardwood pulp or pine pulp or something that's certified, and they can pass a premium on, or not, depending upon their supply and demand situation.
What about OSB interest in certified wood?
And so, yeah, OSB interest, I'm not up enough on that to know, so I apologize for not knowing the answer to that. If you're in an area that has an OSB mill and material going to that, you can find out about that, but I don't know how to answer that question.
How does a large mill like the Domtar one mentioned keep certified and uncertified wood from being mixed?
I would love for nobody to ask that question. So not because I don't know the answer, but so let me try and explain it like this. There's two ways to deal with this inventory control business. Okay, one is you actually have two log piles, let's say, or two pulpwood piles. So here you got certified pulpwood sitting here, and you got uncertified here. That's one way to keep it separate. Okay. Now, if you think about a pulp mill for a minute, they can't do that very well. I mean, everything's got to go into a big chip pile, okay, eventually, and that kind of thing. And they don't have separate chip piles for certified chips and uncertified chips. They could, but they don't. And they'll mix it together. Now, there's an inventory tracking procedure that allows them to do that because they know how many tons of pulpwood came in. They know how many tons of chips in there are certified and how many tons are uncertified. So they know that in their system. They compile, in that case, if you know that percentage breakdown, if you will, you can combine it all together, and you know that you've got X amount you purchased. Let's say you purchased 1,000 tons of certified pulpwood. And you know how much tons of paper that yields you in the end. So you can like percentages or tons or percentage or whatever. We got this much pulpwood that's come in, this percentage or this many tons of pulpwood's come in certified. We know that yields so much paper, tons of paper in the end that's certified. And they can sell that many tons of certified paper. And they do that with a mixed label. Okay, so that's how that's done. And there's a lot of detail to that, but that's how mills can keep an inventory procedure. It's a tracking procedure on their books to determine that they're not selling more certified paper than they're intaking certified tons of pulpwood. Now I hope that makes sense. That's a short version of it.
All right, moving on. How does a landowner get the best price for his timber if they can only sell to a certified logger?
And so here's the deal. If you've got a landowner out there that let's say the logger only has to be certified if the logger's buying it and cutting and hauling and taking possession of all that kind of thing. If, for example, if a sawmill goes out there and wants certified material and they buy that tract of timber, so the COC holders is the mill, let's say, pulp mill or sawmill, and they go buy that tract themselves, okay, then the logger doesn't have to be certified because the logger doesn't own it. In that case, the logger's just is contract logging it. Okay, so the logger is taken out of the picture in that case. Okay, so a landowner's got a sale set up, they're certified whatever. Different people are bidding on it. Maybe some certified mills are bidding on it. Some uncertified mills are bidding on whatever, and loggers might be bidding on it as well. So in that case, if you want to get credit for your certified material and there's a premium in the market, it's going to go in one route to the mill that's certified. Okay, if the logger buys it and you want to get that premium, that logger wants to get a premium, he's got to have a chain of custody certificate. So the competition still works. Okay, and if there's enough premium and interest there by a certified company or certified logger stuff, guess what? You're going to get the highest bid from them if that certification and that need translates into dollars. So competition still works. Okay, and the certification could give you an edge up, in a bidding process if you're in an area where there's a demand for certified product. In some areas there's not, and you just have to live with that, of course.
Are primarily the consumers or the conservationists pressing for the certification systems?
So what ultimately drives this, and we talked about this in the introductory lecture to this, is it's ultimately driven by environmental concern from the public, if you will. And of course the public's concern is driven by different things. So And the way to look at this is, if you want to be crass about it, this whole certification deal, from the standpoint of making a certified wood product, is based on business. If a business believes that they need certified material for whatever reason, okay, it's a business decision that they go get it, okay, that they have a certificate, that they go procure certified material. So it's all about business. If there's a business, if business dictates that mill becomes certified, and business dictates logger becomes certified, they do it because it's in their best interest, business interest. Same way with the landowner. So in some ways, you could view this as in a crass financial way. You know, you're going to make a decision to become certified, and what type of certification you get is strictly based on the money you can make off of it. And so all of that's going to dictate the certificates that are in place, whether somebody's going to get certified or not. So on our end of it, down at the FM end of it, the logging end of it, sawmill, it's all about business. Okay. On the upper end of it, what's driving it is businesses that want to do things and be perceived as doing things in the right way, environmentally sound, and keep everybody happy from that perspective. So ultimately, it's all being driven by that.
All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and push out the survey for those of you that want CEUs. If there's any last-minute questions, go ahead and type them in the chat box.
I hope I made that clear about the loggers. There's a couple other people have typed in, and the logger only needs to be certified if they take legal possession of it.